In this week's vlog, you can expect some bad dancing, bias binding for days, and lots of hand sewing. The last qipao or cheongsam I made was this one around the same time this year for my mom. And this time I made one from a folkwear pattern and mostly used traditional tailoring methods from this book here. All I can say is I did improve and also learned a ton, which is always a win in my book, so enjoy this week's fun little sewing journey. Ta-da! So the whole point of this is just to make sure that the sides are fitting well, that it feels comfortable, that I can move around in it and dance in it and like sit in it, which I think I can do all of that based off of that little demonstration I just did there. You can also see that I did little darts right here. That's a choice that you can do. You can choose to not have the darts or you can choose to have the darts. I also did a little bit of piping action right over here just to test it out on the muslin before I actually have to do it on the real fabric. I love like a dress with a little leg slit. I don't know, it just feels so easy breezy. This looks like a big boy pattern, but it really just consists of two primary pieces, which is the front piece and the back piece. The back piece folds over at the shoulders like a warm little hug, which is a pretty common design in traditional historical Asian garments. This is just one type of front opening that you can have. It's called double opening or 双开圆襟 in Chinese, and here are some other common design options. I really like the fact that this pattern walks you through how to custom fit your garment. I adjusted both the bust line and hip line to better match my measurements. It wasn't until after I did all of this that I finally felt familiar enough with the pattern to go get my fabric. What I always imagined was like a plaid cottony material or something with like vertical stripes I thought would be really cute. Essentially, I just want like summer in the Hamptons or like, you know, walking along the summer palace types of vibe. Just very loose, very flowy, maybe a little bit more summery. I promise I had a vision and a plan that quickly got dashed by Joann's. Girl, I trusted you. The shirting fabrics were really limited, and while Joann's has a lot of quilting cotton, the drape of it is a little bit too stiff. So I had to turn to the silk fabric section, which is kind of a lie because everything is made out of synthetics. Once I had no other options, I chose this poly charmeuse that honestly I hated almost the entire process of sewing. I'm just gonna be really honest, but it's now grown on me. And I mean, come on, look at these cute little moths. I am so proud of this little bias bound edge. I don't know if you can hear the excitement in my voice. I spent most of the past couple of days just trying to figure out what type of bias binding that I wanted. I ended up going with this green combination. It took me kind of a long time to get to that point. I had to make a bunch of little tiny samples. I wrote down all of the different areas that I will need to bias bind. The collar and the hemline and side slits scare me the most. With one successful application under my belt, let me explain how I made the bias binding following instructions from this book. I first made strips of bias from my fabric, pieced the strips together by matching it at the corners, sewed the right sides together, and then pressed an 1/8 inch for each color. And you just repeat this fun little process 6 more times. I then attached the strip to my garment before folding it over, pressing, and then slip stitching it down. The bulk of time spent on this pattern really is making and attaching bias binding. For attaching the collar, I also deviated from the pattern by referencing both the book and this tutorial. I first attached bias binding to the bottom, stitched it to my neckline, stay stitched the inner collar to the outer collar, before finally stitching the bias binding starting from the front edge of the back piece over the top of the collar and ending at the other front of the back piece. I thought this just created a nicer finish than what the pattern recommended. Finally, the last step is to stitch down the side seams. I finished the edge by serging it, and because I added darts, I also included an invisible zipper. I have seen that face more than a million times, like a million. It's very secure, which I was a little bit worried that it wouldn't be. There's like a way of sewing it that I guess is very secure on here so that it doesn't pop off, which did happen to my mom when I was making her qipao. I don't like the fact that there are two moths right smack in the middle of the collar. This was actually supposed to be the outer collar. I was just a little bit too lazy to take it apart. Everything was fraying on me, so I was just like, I will just keep it so that the two little moms are in the front keeping me company, you know? I tried this on my body, and this is where the snaps I think most naturally would fall. So I'm going to put the other part of this snap right over here. At the end of the day, what I really wanted was just something that was long and flowy and that you could feel like you could walk around the city or the town in, and this definitely feels like that. So I'm very, very happy about that. I'm very happy with the fit of it. So would I recommend this pattern? Yes, 100%. I think they do a really good job of covering like the general basis of the traditional qipao cheongsam tailoring from, you know, my limited knowledge of it. I'm still learning, obviously, but like from what I have read and learned about so far, like they do their due diligence. They also reference a qipao cheongsam maker in San Francisco that they consulted. They also mentioned scraping the flour paste mixture to make your frog knots and binding, which is something that's a very traditional technique. So they do their due diligence. However, like, do you need to reference other videos while you're making this, like any other pattern? Yes, if they could cover everything, it would be a book at that point. Speaking of books, I have this book right here, which I have already mentioned in my previous video that I used to reference. Basically what it translates to is couture sewing techniques of making qipao cheongsam, and I referenced this for making the bias binding. I referenced it for making the collar, which again, as I mentioned, I did a slightly different method than what the pattern had originally recommended. Also, I want to show you just my annotations. Oh, it's too bright. This book is literally just shining too bright like a diamond. Anyways, I put a lot of like pinyin in the margins. My parents say I have a kindergartner's reading level of Chinese, which is very accurate, although I do think that I am improving quite significantly in my Chinese from having to like read through all of this and translate it in my head into English. Yeah.